Hey, we are back, and I am not going to intro y'all to death. Good evening, and welcome back to Night Court. Have got to, well, it is what it is. We are back in session for another scintillating, is it scintillating? Round of court with the legendary trial number one. This is our first legendary trial from Court TV. Who shot the sheriff? 2002, the state of Georgia versus Sidney Dorsey. Corrupt sheriff, ousted from his position, ousted from his seat of power and prestige, and just fuckery, sheer fuckery that he got into in that position of sheriff of DeKalb County. He got ousted, lost his position, but no, he couldn't roll over and just take that. Nope. He had to hatch a deadly plan to have his rival assassinated, with the hopes of once having removed his rival out of the way, he could regain his seat and position as the DeKalb sheriff. Unfortunately, his rival, Derwin Brown, did lose his life. That part of the plan was successful. The second half was not as successful. They was found out a year later now. Sidney Dorsey has been on trial, the trial of his life, fighting for his freedom. Tonight we get into closing arguments. Okay, we're going to be wrapping this up between, I really wanted to try to wrap this up tonight. So we're going to do the closing arguments and get this wrapped up. And so we can see what trial. We're probably not going to do a legendary trial. We'll probably do a more recent, a more current trial. I am taking recommendations. The next, hey Winter, hey C Dupree, the next legendary trial we're gonna be doing, maybe not this month, maybe the second half of March, will be the Mendez trial, the Mendez brothers trial. Okay, that's the next legendary trial we're gonna do. We're gonna do a big one. That's gonna be the Mendez brothers. I think what we're gonna do is some quickie trials, ones that take just one sitting week, Monday to Thursday, and then we're done with them. We're gonna do some of those. But if anyone have a suggestion for a trial they definitely want to see, that they seen but they want to see and discuss here with the Lit Lane Jury Box, please let me know. Okay, please let me know. Now, I know a few people going to be joining us a little late. That's fine. I just want to go ahead and get jump started into this. That way we can get, hopefully we can get the, I know the prosecution closing was an hour, and maybe we can get the defense too. Okay. All right. Thank y'all for joining me. Please hit the like. Hey, Candy Cane. Now, tomorrow, you know what? I guess I'll come on here. I hate saying when I'm going to come and then don't come. I think one of, like, I'm gonna come on. Either way it go. Tomorrow we're gonna come in and listen to the closing arguments for that trial that I played today. We listened to the testimony from what was his name? Zachary Hughes. That was so interesting earlier today. The jury is out and deliberating. They had not reached a verdict by the end of court today. So we'll listen to that tomorrow, the closing arguments, in the morning. Okay. Just in case you guys, all y'all was here earlier today, cross-examination of Zachary Hughes, the state asked one question: did he drag Christina by her arms or by her ankles? They did reach a verdict, but when I looked in, well, don't tell me what it is, because when I looked, the jury had came in and asked the question, what's the difference between second degree harassment or something like that. Well, they can only reach one damn verdict when the man say he did it. Guilty. Duh. You know what I'm saying? No spoiler alert there. Okay. What happened with the chief in Houston getting arrested for child P? I ain't heard nothing about that. I don't watch the news. I don't know. So tomorrow we'll just come in and talk about that lady. In the morning we'll talk about that lady from Michigan who left her kids, and then I'm gonna look up what you're talking about with the with the Houston Chief. Child, I ain't even heard nothing about that. All right, so let's get this going. I will be looking it up. And my honey ain't even tell me nothing about that. Because normally he be like, oh, did you see this? He kept telling me about children and vape pens. Let's see. Now, our judge here who keeps stealing my hairstyle, she seemed to be in a very good mood. I guess she happy that this goddamn trial ending. I ain't seen her smile this the whole time.
Information about this case, about parties. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a great 4th of July. I know I did. All right. Now I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked you each and every day of this trial. Other than what has been presented at this trial, have you in any form or fashion received information about this case, about parties in this case, or anything connected to this case, whether by news, by radio, by conversation, whether written or not? Has anyone received any information outside of the evidence in this case? If so, please raise your hand. All right, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for abiding by your oath. Now, we are at the stage of this case, which I told you last week when we broke, the evidence is closed. There is no more evidence for you to consider or to be heard at this point. We are at the stage where the attorneys make their closing arguments. Closing arguments, just like the opening statements at the beginning of this case, are not evidence and not to be considered by you as evidence in this case. All right? Now, we expect this process to take several hours. I want to assure you that we will be taking breaks, regularly scheduled breaks, just as we have during the course of this trial. Again, if you can't hear something someone is saying, just simply let us know that, and they'll try to speak up. All right? All right, gentlemen, you ready to proceed?
Ready to state, Your Honor.
All right. Ready for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Petrie?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm reluctant to start the closing argument this way, but it's time, I think, to be honest with you about one aspect of today, and that's this. Imagine, if you will, the longest movie you've ever seen, and add about an hour and a half to that movie. And now substitute me and Don Samuel for Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts. That's the kind of day you got facing you right now. But it is important to the state, it's important to the defense. You folks are getting ready to hear arguments from both sides in this case. Luckily for you, the court has set time limits on the amount of time that we can spend with these arguments. We're counting on you folks to pay attention through these arguments like you've paid attention throughout the trial, to fulfill your oath that you've done so well so far, to pay attention, to listen, and to apply the law that the court is going to give you at the end of this trial to the facts that you have heard introduced, the testimony you've heard, and the exhibits introduced in this trial, and come up with a verdict in this case that speaks the truth. We're all depending on you to do your very best to pay attention, to stick with us. As the judge said, we're going to take breaks. It's very, very important. The defense told you in its opening statement that Sidney Dorsey was a rookie sheriff and that he didn't know what to do. Mr. Steele told you that the evidence would be that Mr. Dorsey's aides told him, and this is a quote, "Sidney, these people work for you. You can take the gas, the vehicle, and the employee because it helps you." The defense told you that Mr. Dorsey was told by his attorney, Ron Ramsey, "These people work for you." The defense promised you that you would see a proclamation, a reaffirmation authored by Ron Ramsey that said exactly that. The defense admitted in its opening statement that the way Sidney Dorsey used the sheriff's department, its employees, its property, its vehicles, was distasteful. That was his own word. Then Mr. Steele did something interesting. He told you in one breath that what Mr. Dorsey did was distasteful but legal, that he was entitled to use or rather misuse the county's employees, the vehicles, and the other property. And then he turned an immediate 180-degree turnaround and said, he started whining that Mr. Dorsey was a rookie. He was a freshman. He didn't know what to do. He got bad advice. In other words, the defense started this trial by talking out of both sides of its mouth. On the one hand, he was saying, folks, if you're gullible enough to believe that all of the misuse of county property that Sidney Dorsey did, which I, his defense attorney, have already told you is distasteful, if you're gullible enough to believe that that was legal, then by golly, that's our defense. But on the other hand, the defense is saying, if you don't buy that from me, if you see through that, then our defense is going to be, he got bad advice. He was following bad advice. He was a rookie. He didn't know what to do. Now, the obvious problem that creates for defense up front, besides the fact that it starts out talking out both sides of its mouth, is this. The evidence in this case that you have heard, the facts of this case, have shown you something that you don't need me to explain to you. You've heard the evidence. You've seen the witnesses. You've seen the exhibits. And here's the problem with what the defense said at the beginning. Sidney Dorsey didn't seek advice. He gave orders. Sidney Dorsey didn't solicit suggestions. He dictated what he'd done, what he wanted done, and he expected it to get done without questions and without delays. Remember all the witnesses who came in here, witness after witness, and testified about the times that they tried to give Mr. Dorsey advice. Chief Deputy Dana Scott, over and over, she recommended that someone with a bad criminal record not be hired, that someone who had lied on his application for employment not be hired. Over and over again, Sidney Dorsey did what he wanted to do anyway. Jerry Kiefer and Angela King from the Human Resources Division of the Sheriff's Department, over and over, unqualified applicants with criminal records, they would recommend that they not be hired. Over and over again, Sidney Dorsey hired those people, those unqualified people, over the objections, over the recommendations of Mr. Kiefer and Ms. King from the Human Resources Department. When Major Scipio got the nerve to confront the defendant about the ethics and legality about the way that Sidney Dorsey was using county property, what happened? Major Scipio gets transferred back to the jail, the division of the Sheriff's Department, which most people hope to graduate from and nobody really wants to work in. When Ron Ramsey advised the defendant about the defendant's use of county property and the way he was running things, what happened to Ron Ramsey? Ron Ramsey was quickly shown the door. When Lieutenant Scandrett voiced his concerns over the fact that the defendant wanted to, quote, fast-track Melvin Walker to post-training. Melvin Walker, a man with a dishonorable discharge from the Marines due to drug abuse. When Sidney Dorsey wanted to jump Melvin Walker ahead of the good men and women of the Sheriff's Department who had paid their dues, who had earned the right to go to school, to get the training, to advance their career, when Lieutenant Scandrett voiced his concern, Mr. Dorsey, I don't think that's fair. I don't think we can do that. Do you remember what Sidney Dorsey's response to Lieutenant Scandrett was? What part of my request didn't you understand? Remember Ceresa Beasley, when she told the defendant she wanted to end their relationship. You don't know who you're talking to. You don't know who I am, he said. It's over, said Sidney Dorsey, when I say it's over. Patrick Cuffey, perhaps the worst employee in the history of the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office, not only gets brought aboard and hired by Sidney Dorsey, he gets promoted. He gets made into a deputy. Ultimately, he is assigned the cushy assignment of community relations. Think about that for a second. Who in his right mind, if he's legitimately concerned about either the department or the community, is going to put a Patrick Cuffey as a goodwill ambassador to the community for the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office? Time and time again, Patrick Cuffey got in trouble. Time and time again, his supervisors tried to have him moved, disciplined, or even better yet, terminated. Time time and time again, Sidney Dorsey coddled and pampered and took care of his protege, Patrick Cuffey, shredding the pride of the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department, rendering the concept of accountability laughable, and making a complete mockery of any kind of an idea of a legitimate chain of command. No, Sidney Dorsey didn't get bad advice. He scorned bad advice. He scorned good advice. He didn't want advice at all. He wanted to give orders, and when he got advice, at best he ignored it. At worst, he humiliated and insulted the people trying to give him the advice, people trying to do the right thing, the fair thing. In King Sidney's own self-deluded mind, he could do no wrong. And woe unto her or him who dared challenge his infallibility. Sidney Dorsey was not a rookie sheriff making rookie mistakes. He was a seasoned law enforcement officer with a college degree and a law school diploma hanging on his wall. A man who sent himself to sheriff school all over the country. One of the exhibits you have is State's Exhibit 43. Take a few minutes in the jury room and look at that. Sidney Dorsey sent himself to training throughout this country at sheriff school, over and over again at taxpayer expense. He was not a rookie sheriff making rookie mistakes. Sidney Dorsey had the opportunity to be a sheriff that DeKalb County could be proud of. But instead, he turned the sheriff's department into a personal chauffeuring, babysitting, Lexus, Mercedes, and limousine repairing, go-kart toting, door unlocking, Happy Meal fetching, bribe-infested, scandal-ridden organization that crushed the pride and the morale of the good men and women who work there.
Ooh-wee. Did we just hear the prosecutor drag? Okay, he is dragging on tonight. Hey, Tweety. Right, see, Dupree, he is on a roll. I love his passion. I love his excitement. I love his carriage. I love his tone. Okay, this is exciting. Let's go, prosecutor. Let's go. That was a drag.
Sidney Dorsey was not a rookie sheriff. He may have been a rookie thief to have been so obvious, but he wasn't a naive new sheriff making freshman mistakes. In January of 1997, Sidney Dorsey found himself at the throttle of the gravy train, and he was going to make sure that he took full advantage of every opportunity he had for graft, theft, bribes, sex, but most of all, for power. Sidney Dorsey was not a rookie. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he didn't care what anybody in the department thought about it. Now, before we get into more of the actual charges in the case, it's important for you folks to understand that this case is different from most other criminal cases in that, number one, Sidney Dorsey, by virtue of being the sheriff, had power to commit these crimes that most people don't do. But secondly, and at least as important, by virtue of being the sheriff, Sidney Dorsey had duties and obligations that a regular citizen doesn't have either. In other words, he had the power to commit these crimes because he was sheriff, but he had an extra duty not to commit these crimes because he was sheriff.
Okay, take you
The position of sheriff provided Sidney Dorsey with the opportunity and motive to perpetrate the thefts and bribes and all the other crimes charged in this indictment. This position, however, imposed on him certain obligations. Because he was a sheriff, and a sheriff is a public officer, Sidney Dorsey had many obligations and duties that Joe Citizen doesn't have. Joe Citizen can't steal. It's against the law for anybody to commit a theft. But a public officer, a sheriff, has an obligation, a duty, not only not to steal, but to protect the property of the county. As a law enforcement officer, Sidney Dorsey was on duty 24 hours a day. He's not on duty 24 hours a day. He has the obligation to enforce the law, whether he's on duty or off duty 24 hours a day. Now, don't understand that to mean that therefore he could have people driving him and his family all over the country. What that means is he's not entitled to break the law just because he's left the office. He carries the duty not only to enforce the law, but he carries the duties of other public officers with him 24 hours a day. The sheriff is required to take an oath, and you saw that oath. You heard Thomas Brown talk about it. He takes an oath that he will avoid partiality in the performance of his duties, that he will only take his lawful fees. This is important. All public officers, including the sheriff, have a duty to protect the public property. Public officers, including the sheriff, are prohibited by using public property for their own benefit. Finally, public officers are trustees. What does that mean? That the property that they have possession of is entrusted to them for the benefit of the public. It's not their property. It's DeKalb County's property, and he has an obligation to protect it. The labor and the services of county employees, county vehicles, buildings, and other property are all included in that. The property that he has to protect includes the labor of the employees there. Sidney Dorsey took an oath to carry out these duties. He violated that oath, and he violated his duty as a sheriff and as a public officer. Every act of theft, every act of bribery, every act of false statements and lies and other attempts to cover up what he did, every single one of those acts was in direct violation of his duty as a sheriff, of his duty as a public officer, and in violation of his oath as a sheriff. And ultimately, his final act of theft involving the election of 2000 violated every of those principles too.
He needs to slow down.
Let's talk a little bit about the sheriff's power of the employees. Over and over, the defense tried to hint here that they're his employees and he could use them any way he wanted to. First of all, it's important to recognize they're not his employees in the sense that they're his property. They're his employees only in two areas. One, they're his employees in that he can direct them in the performance of their official duties, and that's the emphasis, official duties. He can hire and fire them, but they are county employees. He has the power to hire and fire them. They're paid by the county. They work for the county. He only has the power to direct them in the performance of their official duties. He has no power to direct them in doing personal favors for him, for driving his family to Disney World or to New York, or picking up his girlfriend's children, or driving his daughters to Tennessee, or driving to South Georgia to pick up a go-kart.
Yep, in a limb.
The deputies are employees of the sheriff only to that extent. Beyond the power of the sheriff to hire and fire them and the power to direct them in their official duties, you need to understand the sheriff has no power whatsoever over those employees. He has absolutely no authority to use their labor for his personal benefit, and he has no authority to deprive the county of the services of these employees that the county is paying for. The employees' labor, the vehicles, and the fuel all belong to the county. They don't belong to the sheriff. You remember one of the very first witnesses for the state who testified, Sheriff Thomas Brown. Over and over, he was asked the question about any statutory or constitutional authority for sending deputies on personal errands, for using the employees the way that the evidence clearly shows Sidney Dorsey misused and misappropriated this property. Never once was there a yes answer. Never once was there an affirmative answer. The bottom line is this: there is absolutely no provision, no constitutional provision, no law, no statute, no common law right, no DeKalb County ordinance, no nothing that says Sidney Dorsey could use and misuse the labor and the other property of DeKalb County the way he did. The evidence is quite to the contrary. The evidence is no, he can't do it. Now you may ask yourself, what are the official duties of the sheriff? The sheriff can direct the deputies in the performance of their official duties. On page 6, I believe, of your indictment, the duties are set out. But you also heard them from Sheriff Thomas Brown. What are the lawful duties that Sheriff Dorsey would have been able to direct these employees in? Maintaining the jail, transporting prisoners, providing security in a courtroom, serving as a bailiff in a courtroom, serving arrest warrants, looking for fugitives. Many, many lawful duties that Sidney Dorsey had wide discretion in directing his employees. No discretion, no power whatsoever to use them the way that he did. Now, I want to give you some hints that I think will help you break down the indictment. The indictment is many pages long. You heard it read. It rationally breaks down into three parts. Count 1 is the murder count. Counts 2 and 3 are the RICO or corruption counts. Counts 4 through 15 are 2 counts of bribery, 1 count of violation of oath by a public officer, and 9 counts of theft by taking. I think it makes sense, and I think it will help you if you analyze this case this way. Start with the corruption. Start with the beginning corruption that Sidney Dorsey infiltrated the sheriff's office with when he took office in 1997. It builds up to greater and greater acts of corruption, worse acts of corruption, culminating eventually in December 2000 with the ultimate act of corruption, the death of Derwin Brown. If you analyze the case in that way, I think it will help make it simpler for you to work through the many counts and the many different parts of the indictment. Let's talk a little bit about RICO, which is probably a fairly new concept for you. You may have heard about it. First of all, RICO stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization. It's an intimidating name, but it's a pretty straightforward, simple concept. The RICO portion of your indictment not only includes count 2 and count 3, but it includes narrative descriptions after it. What is the pattern of racketeering activity that the judge told you about? What are the incidents of racketeering activity? What is the enterprise that's involved? Some of the terms have very, very specific definitions that apply here. You need to understand that counts 2 and 3 don't stand alone. They should be read in conjunction with the pages. I think it goes up through page 28, I believe. The individual incidents of racketeering activity, I believe, are pages 11 through 28. You need to understand this. Insofar as it applies to this case, there are 2 ways to commit a RICO violation. Count 2 deals with one of those ways. Anyone who either directly or indirectly acquires or maintains property, including U.S. currency, through a pattern of racketeering activity is guilty of RICO. Let's look at that again. Anyone who directly or indirectly acquires or maintains property, including money, doesn't have to be money, but it can be money, through a pattern of racketeering activity commits the offense of RICO. I'll define some of those terms for you in a second. Count 3 is a little different. Still a violation.
Look here. I would be like, look, when I go back there, I'm not finna think about all that. He guilty of everything. Boom. There you have it. I'm just saying, that's just too much for a juror to be getting $5 a day for.
Violation of RICO. Count 3 says anyone who directly or indirectly associates with, participates in, or conducts an enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity is guilty of another form of RICO. Count 2, you acquire or maintain property through a pattern of racketeering activity. Count 3, there's no requirement that property be acquired or maintained, but there is a requirement that the defendant be associated with, connected with, or participate in an enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. The state does not have to prove that the defendant is a gangster or a racketeer or that he's associated with organized crime. That's not required at all. Let's look at what the definition of racketeering activity is insofar as it applies to this case. In this case, racketeering activity can be one of 6 different types of crimes. 1, theft by taking. 2, bribery. 3, false statements and writings. 4, solicitation of another to commit murder. 5, acts involving murder, and finally 6, tampering with witnesses. There are multiple counts of theft by taking, multiple incidents of bribery, multiple incidents of false statements in writing, 1 incident of solicitation of another to commit murder, multiple incidents of acts involving murder, and 2 incidents of tampering with witnesses. Now, here's the important thing that you need to understand. A pattern of racketeering activity is actually quite simple. There are, by my count, 51 separate incidents of racketeering activity alleged. 27 or so in the theft, 6 or 8 in the bribery, 7 or 8 in the false statements, on and on. A total of about 51. Georgia law defines a pattern of racketeering activity as 2 or more. 2 or more incidents of racketeering activity. The incidents of racketeering activity are the individual thefts, the individual bribes that are outlined in your indictment in pages 11 through 28. For instance, incident 1A is one of the incidents charging that the defendant stole from the county by sending Joe Murray to the bank. 1B, the defendant stole from the county by sending Joe Murray to another bank. Those 2, in and of themselves, if you find that they are related because they have the same or similar intents, results, victims, accomplices, methods of commission, or are somehow otherwise related by distinguishing characteristics, that is, they're not isolated incidents, then that is all the law requires. That is all that the state must prove. But here we have proved, ladies and gentlemen, that Sidney Dorsey committed each and every one of the 51 incidents, the acts of racketeering activity. Now, you may hear in the charge from the court or from the defense attorney the phrase predicate act. It's the same thing. An incident of racketeering activity, that is the bad act that forms the backbone, the meat of the racketeering activity, is sometimes referred to as a predicate act. It is not necessary that the incidents all be against the same victim, as long as they are related in the way I described to you. That is, they have otherwise similar results, accomplices, victims, method of commission, or are otherwise related by some characteristic, by a distinguishing characteristic. Only 2 are necessary, but I can't emphasize, the state has shown over and over that the defendant committed many, many more than the minimum requirement of 2. It's important to recognize this too. Insofar as RICO is concerned, an attempt or a conspiracy or solicitation, the court's going to charge you as to what solicitation and conspiracy are. An attempt or a solicitation or a conspiracy to commit one of these incidents of racketeering activity is sufficient under Georgia law. So, the pattern of racketeering activity, the state has to prove both for count 2, acquiring the property through a pattern of racketeering activity, and for count 3, being connected with an enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. What are the common threads between all of these incidents that show you that they do in fact establish a pattern? Well, the simplest one to understand, the clearest one, is that every single one of these crimes was made possible because Sidney Dorsey was sheriff. That's how he was able to send these people to the bank.
So, Lady Steph say jurors take pay reductions. I had 30 days to serve. Damn, he was on there for a long time. And got paid full time from my job, plus the little 15 from the court. Well, I didn't know, and I think he was saying that because about this said, I feel sorry for the jurors who take a pay reduction to serve. So I thought, having never served on the jury before, I thought all they got was the money from the court. Is it a law? Well, when you have to serve jury duty, where the jobs have to pay you the regular amount of money? Or is that on a company by company basis? Or what? Yeah, see, Jill say yes. Some jobs do not pay you. Yeah, I didn't think that was just across the board that you do the jury duty and you get your full-time wages. You know, I think you might have got real lucky in that. Girl, I go waste a day, never selected by, wait a minute. But it's a break from the office. Okay, You go waste a day. No, it's by company basis. Okay. Yeah, so count yourself lucky, you know. They're not gonna call me to do it because I got a record.
That's how he was able to find people to drive himself, his family, his girlfriend's family all over the country. That's how he was able to use the employees of the...
I got to say this real quick. Sidebar. And they got a lot of people up in here in the clouds. Hello in the clouds. Welcome. Hit the like. This is a sidebar, okay? Jill's comfort zone. I was washing my son's hair and doing his hair, so I couldn't say nothing. But girl, you bet not lose that other weight. Yeah, you can lose a little bit more weight and get super duper fine. But girl, when you said an extra 50 pounds, all I can imagine was Lil Luther. You know what I'm saying? Not saying you look like Luther Vandross at all. But all I can imagine was Lil Luther and Little Freddie Jackson and Lil Bitty Oprah and Lil Bitty, what's that lady name? Who do Divorce Court or whatever her name is. 50 pounds? Hell no. At the most about, I'm sorry, but I wanted to tell you that so bad. Girl, no. And I'm going to tell you too. I'm going to be like, Jill, you looking like Lil Jill. Okay. Like Lil Luther, Lil Jill.
Sheriff's Department as his own property. That's how and why he made the false statements to try to cover up his deeds. All of the acts, the thefts, the briberies, the false statements, the solicitation for murder, the acts involving murder, and the tampering with witnesses, all of those were made possible and motivated by his role as sheriff. That's enough in it of itself to find a pattern. But over and over, you see other sub-patterns there too. The thefts are all related. When he's misusing county property to make money for himself, to avoid having to, pay his own way on vacations, all of these are related. So any way that you agree upon that he used his office as sheriff is one of the ways to connect these into the pattern. Count 3 requires that there be an enterprise. In this case, the enterprise is the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office. But an enterprise can be almost anything. It can be a person, it can be a group, it can be a legitimate organization, it can be a corporation, it can be an illicit group, it can be a gang, it can be a government department. The enterprise can be the perpetrator, that is the agency that commits the crimes. It can be the person who commits the crimes. It can be the victim, or as here, simply the entity, the thing that the defendant used to commit the acts of corruption. There is no requirement that the enterprise itself be corrupt. So that pretty much sums up what RICO is. When you get the indictment back, look through the indictment on RICO, the narrative description of that lays out the pattern, the enterprise. Like I said, it has an intimidating name, but it's actually straightforward. Did the defendant commit a pattern of racketeering activity? And clearly he did. All of these incidents of racketeering activity form a pattern. Now let's talk about some of the rules of law that apply to the charges in this case without right now connecting them up with the evidence in this case. Let's talk first about theft by taking. In Georgia, theft by taking involves the theft of property. As it applies to this case, property means anything of value. Employee services, vehicles, and fuel are all property. In this case, because the defendant stole the property in violation of his duties, value is irrelevant on counts 7 through 15. Counts 7 through 15 are theft counts, and we'll explain to you in a minute why 7 through 15 are different from the counts in the RICO. Insofar as the RICO theft counts 1A through 1AA, value is totally irrelevant under any set of circumstances. In counts 7 through 15, value is irrelevant for this reason. Every theft that the defendant committed, as alleged in counts 7 through 15, was committed in violation of his duty. Remember we talked about the duty of a sheriff and the duty of a public officer? As a law enforcement officer, Mr. Dorsey had the duty not only not to break the law, but to enforce the law. As a public officer, he was duty-bound not only not to break the law, but to protect county property, to protect it from waste. He is a trustee. He was entrusted with protecting that property. Every theft that he, as sheriff, committed was in violation of that sacred duty of a public officer and the oath that he took as a sheriff. Value is totally irrelevant. In Georgia, in theft by taking, the manner of taking is irrelevant. Property of another means any property in which someone other than the defendant has a property interest. As you have heard throughout this trial, and there's absolutely no evidence to contradict this, the property, the services of the employees, the vehicles, all of that belonged to the county. It wasn't Sidney Dorsey's property. The intent to deprive the owner of the property may be temporary. It does not have to be permanent. It does not have to be a total permanent stealing. If the intent to deprive the property and the actual deprivation of the property is temporary, that is still sufficient in Georgia law. How does that apply here? When you steal the services of the employee, you don't have to steal them until kingdom come to be guilty of that theft. The intent to deprive the owner of the property is the only intent required. There is no requirement that there be a specific intent to steal. What am I saying there? If the defendant somehow deluded himself into thinking,
Winter, I promise y'all, I just said to myself before, while you was typing that, I was like, man, I'm tired of hearing this man. I'm about sick of this. Let's skip to the end and let's see if he gonna close out strong.
or for Sidney Dorsey's son, Sidney Dorsey Jr., or for Sidney Dorsey's company, SID Incorporated, or divorce work for Sidney Dorsey's nephew, Aaron Blakeney, or legal work for Sidney Dorsey's girlfriend, Sarisa Beasley. Not her traffic ticket, not the warrant application in which her husband was trying to take out a warrant for her in another county for damaging his car, and not to represent her interest in her husband's bankruptcy proceeding. Over and over again, Sidney Dorsey had Ron Ramsey doing, at taxpayer expense, legal work for him, his girlfriend, and his family. Judge Ramsey couldn't stomach what Sidney Dorsey to do all of this thievery. Number one, the unrebutted testimony is that Dorsey himself wrote that proclamation, told Ron Ramsey what to write. Secondly, if Sidney Dorsey actually believed he had the power, he wouldn't have even seen the need to send it to the county commission. And third, the county commission flatly and rightly rejected it. They didn't give him the power. So the defense promised you one thing and showed quite another. The defense told you in its opening statement that the corruption case against Sidney Dorsey was a last-ditch effort to bolster the murder case. That's absolutely uncontrovertibly ridiculous. The reason for that is the corruption case had begun almost 6 months before Derwin Brown was assassinated. District Attorney J. Tom Morgan notified the defendant's attorneys a month before Derwin Brown was assassinated that he was beginning to seek a special grand jury, and he outlined the bribery and the theft charges. Derwin Brown had already begun his own investigation and had reported that to the DA. Shirley McMichael had already started cooperating with the state and had already wired the defendant long before Derwin Brown was killed. Sheriff's Department employees were coming forward. So the corruption investigation had already gone full steam ahead. No, the corruption is not something to bolster the murder. Rather, the murder is one of the final cancerous acts of corruption committed by Sidney Dorsey, a man obsessed with his own self-importance and his own perverted sense of entitlement. A man who placed sex, bribes, graft, power, money, and most of all himself above anything else in the world, including the oath that he took to obey the law and enforce the law. Hardly a day went by that Sidney Dorsey didn't steal something. It may be stealing from the county by sending people to the banks this day. It may be stealing something the next day by having someone drive a family member or his girlfriend's child somewhere. It may be by sending Ron Ramsey to do legal work for his girlfriend or for some other family member. Or it may be using the sheriff's employees in office for campaign contributions. Other days it may be more subtle, perhaps, but no less despicable. Every day he stole the justifiable and well-earned pride of the good men and women of the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department.
That's good.
Every day he stole that. He stole Shirley McMichael's chance to actually succeed on her own merits as the first African-American owner of a bonding company, African-American woman owner of a bonding company in DeKalb County.
I like the way he put that.
He stole Joe Murray's self-respect, publicly humiliating and ridiculing him and breaking his heart in the bargain. He stole the ability of the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office employees to do what they were actually being paid to do. But ultimately, Sidney Dorsey stole something more valuable than money, more
Trust.
valuable than
The
pride,
citizens'
more
trust.
precious than self-respect. He stole the life of Derwin Brown.
Oh, yeah, that too.
He stole the husband of Phyllis Brown. He stole the father of Robert Brown and Robert's 4 brothers and sisters. And in so doing, he stole the right of the DeKalb County people, the citizens, to choose who they wanted to be their next sheriff. Sidney Dorsey stole that election from a man who had the courage to stand up and say, I'm going to clean up the cesspool that Sidney Dorsey has created. By 2000, the gravy train was derailing. Sidney Dorsey, you heard testimony, was losing the Citizens Trust Bank contract. He was losing the power to have sex with women who dared not refuse him.
Stop.
He was losing the power to line his pockets with bribes. He was losing the power to use the people and the property of DeKalb County as his own, as though he was some medieval warlord. The assassination of Derwin Brown was a desperate move by a panicking man whose fool's paradise was being snatched out from beneath him. His earlier acts of corruption, the bribes, the thefts, the false statements, and other attempts to cover it up, they're all illegal and awful enough in their own right. But they weren't enough for Sidney Dorsey. His final act of corruption
The Bell
showed
Department, the
that
one
there
he
is
was
nothing
sleeping
but
with in that
evil
abandoned house.
in him. It showed that there is a big, ugly hole where his heart should be and evil where his conscience should be. In this trial, Sidney Dorsey and his attorneys are trying to pull off one final theft. They're trying to steal the truth from you, from Derwin Brown, and from the Sheriff's Department and the people of DeKalb County. Don't let them steal the truth from all the good people at the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department, the Joe Murrays, the Ron Ramseys, the people that he ran off, the Noah Heimlichs. Remember Noah just said, I just want to do my job. Don't let them steal the truth from Derwin Brown and the good and the hope that he brought to DeKalb County. Don't let them do that. To end, let me just paraphrase some things that Sidney Dorsey himself said. What part of thou shalt not steal didn't Sidney Dorsey understand? What part of thou shalt not kill didn't Sidney Dorsey understand? And the final paraphrase is this. Mr. Dorsey, it's not over when you say it's over. It's over when this jury says it's over.
Ooh,
What part of guilty
don't you understand? Ooh.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good. That was really good. Bravo. And the best part he did was when he did that drag, right? He said he made them a French fry going to Burger Mac, driving my kids, making a daycare. Baby, he dragged them. That was excellent by the prosecution, okay? Let's see what the defense gonna say. Now the defense, that should be entertaining because as usual, how do you properly, when you're putting on a proper defense for your who's sitting there just as guilty as the day is long, you really got to sell it. You really got to have people think against a better judgment. You got to have people think that what they seen, what they heard, wasn't what they seen, wasn't what they heard. That's no easy task. You know, the harder job will probably be for the defense attorney more than the prosecutor. Okay, that's Apollo trying to get Rock to play, y'all. Rock growled at him and he took off running. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Okay, I gotta go on mute. I'm putting the next one up. Y'all speaking? Hold on, y'all. I think I'm stuck. Okay, there we go. Here we go. Apollo, spare me. What am I doing? Let me stop pushing buttons. Hold on. Okay, what? Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, slowly but surely. It sound like Animal Kingdom up in here. Child. Dang, it's taking forever to load up. I'm stuck in limbo. I don't know if y'all can hear me. Let me stop touching stuff. Here we go. Hush, Rock.
All right.
May it please the court, fellow counsel,
Okay, I'm
members of
on
the jury, good morning. Welcome back. Before I review the evidence in the case, and before I respond to many of the things that Mr. Petrie said, I want to talk to you briefly about what it is that we are doing here today, what we've been doing for the past 4 or 5 weeks, and what you all will be doing for the next few days. We make many, many decisions during the course of our lives. We make decisions that are really quite frivolous, and we make a lot of decisions that are really momentous. Frivolous decisions like what movie we want to go see, what restaurant we'll go to, what we'll order when we get to the restaurant. And they're truly momentous decisions that we make during the course of our lives. Decisions about who to marry, whether to get divorced, whether to buy a house. And whenever we make decisions, whether they are the important decisions or the not so important decisions, what always goes through our brains, what always goes through our minds is, do I have enough information to make this decision? Is the quality of the information good enough for me to make this decision? And when we are making those frivolous decisions, decisions about what to eat at a restaurant, we don't really care that much about the quality of the information. Oh, just ask the waitress, what's your favorite thing on the menu? And that's enough information for certain decisions to make the decision. But there are other decisions, the much more momentous decisions, happy ones like whether to get married or buy a house, or tragic decisions like what to do if a family member is terminally ill, where we require considerably more information, a lot more information. For medical decisions, we demand second opinions. We want the best doctors in the community or the state to help us make our decisions. We want second opinions. When we buy a house, we want appraisers to look at the house. We want inspectors to examine the house. We have lawyers who do the closings just to make sure that the information we have is sufficient to justify the decision we're about to make. We don't go to people like Dr. Patrick Cuffey for our second opinions. We don't go to people like Dr. Paul Skyers when we want to make an important medical decision. The decision that you all will make here, whether it's today, tomorrow, or however long it takes, the decision you will make will be one of the most important decisions that you will ever make in your life. You know, you can always sell a house. If you have to, you can divorce your spouse. Those decisions can be changed. But the decision in a murder case, the decision about what to do with a terminally ill member of your family, those decisions are irrevocable. And that is why the decision you will make in the jury deliberation room will be one of the most important decisions of your life. And that's why the judge will tell you when we finish with our arguments that before you make this decision, before you can find any human being in this country guilty of a crime, any crime, you must be convinced of the person's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The quantity of the evidence must be such, the quality of the evidence that you've heard must be such that you are convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a phrase that all of us have heard since we started watching TV shows as young kids. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt means proof of such a convincing character. The information is so strong and compelling that you don't hesitate in making your decision, that your mind is not wavering at all about the correctness of the decision you're about to make. Proof of such a convincing character that you would be willing to rely and act upon it in the most important of your own affairs without wavering, without doubt. The decision is that clear. I suggest to you that the information you have heard in this courtroom from the witnesses presented by the state, that the information is not sufficient. You would not buy a house based on this information. You would not make a decision about a terminally ill member of your family. With regard to some of the counts of this indictment, you wouldn't even choose a flavor of ice cream based on the quality of the information that's been presented to you.
Oh my God. Throw the whole entire closing away. At this moment in time, he's saying ice cream decisions. This is horrible. Horrible.
Shirley McMichael were to come in this courtroom and to tell you that it was sunny outside, I bet the first thing every one of you would do would be to grab your umbrella. Members of the jury, Brian Steele is going to talk about the murder case, count 1. I'm going to be talking to you for the next little while about counts 2 through 15. As you know, as Mr. Petrie explained, counts 2 and 3 charge that Sheriff Dorsey is a racketeer. It charges that he violated the racketeer influence.
Let's hear about the murder one, okay? Because no, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Let's see if his co-patriot, his homeboy, let's see him talk about the murder part, okay? He lost me. That was horrible. I bet that did not age well. I bet he look at that now and say, oh my God. Hold on. You got to give him a bell. Give him a hooker bell.
On behalf of Sydney and everyone involved in this trial, I wish to thank you for your professionalism, your attention, and your willingness to put all other personal and business matters aside and give 100% of yourselves to the goings-on in this courtroom. Yeah. When Sydney chose you to decide his fate, he gave you awesome power. That is why each and every time that you enter this courtroom or leave this courtroom, we stand in your presence. That is a symbol of your awesome power. Much like the Honorable Judge Becker, each and every time she walks into or out of this courtroom, we rise in her presence to show respect for her awesome power as she's the giver of the laws. The first thing that this group did, this jury, ladies and gentlemen, did together was you stood, you raised your right hand, and you took an oath. And by that oath, you swore, you promised that you would reach a verdict in this case based upon two things: the laws or the principles or rules which will be given to you by the Honorable Judge Becker when all parties have concluded its closing arguments, as well as the facts that came into evidence in this case in this courtroom. Since you need to understand some of the laws or principles or rules in this case in order to reach your verdict, I'd like to discuss some of them with you. A law is nothing.
Boo! Okay, y'all, we still growing and growing, okay? And this is one of the moments where I feel okay, like I can feel the temperature of the thing jury box, and you know, we of the like minds, and I must say at this point in time, ring, we already know he guilty, okay? Let's skip over to something more interesting. Okay. Tonight is the last. Oh, is he gonna take the? He might take the stand right for impact statements. Child, we want to get to the interesting parts. All those in favor say aye. Thank you. I'm trying to get my son to give Rock a bath. Baby, the judge was wearing that hair.
First, I'd like to note with sadness the passing of Mr. Carl Bryant on behalf of Mr. Dorsey's defense team. He was a fine lawyer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are we ready to proceed?
Ready from the state, Your Honor.
All right?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll first hear some brief opening remarks from both sides, and then we'll hear witnesses. Go ahead.
Your Honor, the state is not going to make any opening remarks. We do have 4 witnesses that we will call in the sentencing, and then would reserve the right to give concluding argument.
All right, thank you. Mr. Steele?
Your Honor, when we started this process, I never expected to be before the court for sentencing.
Look at the sheriff.
I believe with all my might, power, and heart that the verdict was wrong. However, I'm also trained to respect the verdict. We will vigorously appeal. We have a couple of people to present to the court, and then we understand the court will have to sentence. We'd also like to argue some legal issues to the court concerning the merger of certain counts.
All right, we'll have that opportunity. Thank you. All right, Mr. Morgan, present your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Ms. Bravina Brown.
All right.
Mrs. Brown.
Oh, I think this gonna be that dude, Mama, Derby Brown mother. I don't know who it is, but it's one of the Brown. Oh, the court packed. Oh, wow. She's like a good old mother of the church, huh? Child, what she got in the envelope? Why she gonna hit the brakes with her battery?
Go around and bring the Bible out, if you would, so she can be sworn.
Was they finna try to take her out the wheelchair? I think they said Mr. No, it was one of their state attorneys. Oh no, was it Mr. Dorsey lawyers? Oh.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give to the court is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, self God? State your name, please.
Bravina Brown. Thank you.
Mrs. Brown, please state your name for the record, ma'am.
Bravina Brown.
And Ms. Brown, how are you related to the victim, Durham Brown?
I'm his mother.
Ms. Brown, have you prepared a statement for the court to assist her in determining a sentence in this case?
I have prepared a statement.
And would you please give that statement to the court?
Thank you, Your Honor. While my statement was written, especially for your ears, Mr. Dorsey, it is not for your ears only. It is for everyone in and outside of this courtroom that for the past 19 months, all have but ignored the statements that I have made regarding my son's murder and the corruption in DeKalb County. I know that you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say the jail and beyond. My son and I were very close. For those here and outside the courtroom that for the past 19 months have treated me as though the child I raised with a strong sense of purpose dropped out of the sky just as he died. I have a few memories to share as only a loving mother can. For those that have lied about their relationship with my son and the circumstances.
Oh my God, y'all. Y'all ought to see what my son did to Rocktail. He shaved off all Rocktail. Oh my God. I'm traumatized.
Under which he left one sector of service in DeKalb County to move to another, I commit to you that the truth will be known and that those that have lied will be exposed for the liars that they are. I know you weren't alone in your disdain for my son. I have been writing this statement since the day after your conviction, Mr. Dorsey. My children are hearing it for the first time because there are things that they would not want me to say. However, on this day, as I pray that justice will be served, I'm going to spread my wings like my son's eagle and soar fearlessly. I can because I taught him how to fly and raised up a man that with all your experience, influence, and political clout, you were scared of him. To the point you conspired the death of him and ultimately self-destruct. I'm going to tell you some of the memories of my son. Derwin was a happy child. He was a scout, sang in the choir, loved music, and took piano lessons. Derwin wanted to be part of a band, so he formed an interracial band and called it Purple Haze. I became their manager. His father had a spiritual singing group, and he couldn't be two places at once. At that time, drugs were prevalent, so I was glad that I was there. The last place the band played was Philharmonic Hall, and Geraldo Rivera was the MC. I was so proud of him. In the summertime, Derwin worked with the Department of Parks and Recreation, painted houses, and for 2 years, he worked at a home for boys in Long Island, New York. When Derwin left us, he still had a heart to help young men, not in a boys' home, but in a county jail that was not only corrupt, but negligent in meeting the needs of its inmates as they had rights, even though they were incarcerated. Derwin took advanced classes in high school. He went to his father one day and asked his father if he'd pay for him to go to an academy in the summer so that he could graduate early. Derwin did graduate early and went on to college without marching with his class. He came out with a degree in sociology and criminal justice. He went into the Marines, came out, and he came to Atlanta to attend Atlanta University to work on his master's. Derwin was all about helping people and making a change for the better from very early on in life. In explaining his reasons for wanting to get out of high school early and go on to college to his dad, he simply stated he had a lot to do in life. Not long after Derwin's passing, He and my deceased husband came to me in a dream. I shared that dream with Chief Moody, Precinct Commander Maddox, and Chief of Detectives Journal. When I told them about my dream, they looked at me like I was crazy. The next time I saw them, they asked me if I had any more dreams. And I said yes, but reminded them of the look they gave me upon mentioning my first dream. They advised me that their look was that of disbelief, that I knew the things that I knew, and I was right. I told them I was giving them a check they could take to the bank and cash. And I tell you what else I know, that no one that took part in my son's murder, whether they pulled the trigger or had the power of influence to not only conceive, but try to cover up the conspiracy, will escape justice. No one. And just as I told the gentleman, I'll tell anyone within the sound of my voice, they can take this to the bank and cash it. Joel 2nd chapter, 28th verse in my Bible says, quote, "And it shall come to pass afterwards that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions." God speaks to me through dreams. In closing, no one knows, unless they've lost a child, what I've been through since you murdered my son. 50 years ago, I had a head full of hair.
Lord have mercy.
And I looked like this.
I thought you was about to pull out a
3
wig.
years ago, I had a head full of hair. And I looked like this. Wrecked nerves have made my health decline and has taken my hair away. And I have to wear a wig. There is now a hole where my heart used to be. A hole that you're responsible for. And I pray you never forget it. I don't hate you. I can't get into heaven hating you. If I don't get to heaven, I can't be with my son again. And I won't let you rob me twice.
That was good.
But I am angry. And I want you to get what you deserve. God gives me the right to be angry and cry out for justice. As a woman of faith, one that knows the goodness of the Lord, I find it hard to imagine a heart so evil, so selfish, that in its own pursuit, it would not consider the devastation to the number of lives
He's just a
affected
mean man.
by
Look
the
at him.
brutal death of a person so loving and so loved as Daryl. However, I know what is true, and truth demands justice. In that I have to suffer the rest of my life, missing my son, experiencing the loss over and over like it was yesterday, knowing that his life, long dreams of service and purpose was cut short. You being sentenced to life imprisonment is not fair. It's just, according to society, but it's not fair. In the many still nights of the rest of your life, as you sit in your prison cell, I am sure you'll
I like that
reflect
too,
on
ladies.
your
That was
actions
good.
and what God's judgment will be for you as you pay society's price for murder. He only knows. But I know that he is more than fair. He is just, and he will judge you for Derwin's murder. I understand that you lost your mother while you were in prison. And for you to have gone so far in life, she had to have been a good mother. Be thankful to God that she did not live to see her work, her hope, her son's life fall to destruction by selfishness, greed, and an evil that I am sure, so very sure, she had no part of. Be thankful that she passed, not knowing your shameful destiny. Be thankful that you did not bring her
Ooh, not putting his mama
the
on.
lifelong pain and suffering you have given me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Nothing further from the state from Mrs. Brown yet.
Any questions? All right. Thank you,
Baby, that
ma'am.
was good.
If you'll
Putting his
assist her,
mama on it.
please.
Yes, indeed.
Your Honor, at this time, the state will call Ms. Brandy Rhodes.
All right.
Damn, that didn't even move him. That didn't even make him cry. That didn't make him put his head down. Nothing. Nothing. Even the mention of his dead mama and the shame she would feel did not move him. Wow.
Do you swear affirm that the testimony shall give to the court to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, self God?
I do.
State your name, please.
Brandy Rhodes.
Ms. Rhodes, are you related to the victim in this case, Derwin Brown?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Rhodes, how are you related to him?
I'm his daughter.
And at this time, would you like to make a statement to the court to assist her honor in sentencing in this case?
Yes, I would.
Would you please go ahead and make that statement?
As I sit here, I'm almost speechless. The first thing that comes to my mind is the day, December 15th. Watching my father graduate was the happiest day of my life because I know it's something that he wanted so bad. And the fact that he wanted it, I wanted it for him. That day was a happy day. After we left graduation, we went Christmas shopping. And with him being away at school for so long, his grandkids hadn't seen him that often. I have 3 girls. At the time, I only had 2. I was 3 months pregnant. And the whole day, my father toted them, and he had a bad back. And I know his back was killing him, but it didn't matter. He still carried them the whole way. That night, when I got that phone call, I was at home. We had just left my father, and we were laying across the bed looking at movies. And as soon as I got that phone call, I stopped breathing. I started screaming and hollering, and my cousin picked me up and she said, "Brandy, you're pregnant. You have to breathe. Get yourself together." And my kids are sitting there, and I thought about it, and I said, God, they can't see me like this. When we got to my mom's house, all I could think about was, I tried to think positive. My father was a beautiful person. Anybody that knew him, I don't think he put a frown on anybody's face. Regardless of who you were, he made you smile. And I could not comprehend anybody harming him purposely. And the only thing that I could think of was that somebody was arguing and he was trying to help them, and maybe he got shot in the arm, maybe he got shot in the leg, but he's gonna be okay. When I got to the hospital and Uncle Crowder looked at me and he said he didn't make it, to me that was
Hey,
just,
December baby, welcome
I
back.
thought it was a sick joke. I said, you've got to be kidding me. You know, stop playing. He's okay. You know, to me, I'm the only girl out of 5. My father was my world. You know, I mean, he was my breath. And he was invincible. I mean, 20 years of being a police officer, I never worried about him being shot. I never worried about him being hurt. That was never anything that crossed my mind. I always knew my father was coming home. And at this point, you know, that day we left graduation, me and him was talking, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, he's comfortable. He's going to be in the office. You know, there's no reason. I really don't have anything to worry about. And to know that someone shot my father purposely 17 times, 17 times, is just unheard of for me. I can't sleep at night. You know, I have, at the time my daughter was 5. Her and my father are as close as me and my father was. And the next morning, when everybody was at my house because they couldn't go back to my mom's house, the first thing she walks out the room and says, "Where's my papa?" I had to look at my 5-year-old daughter and tell her that her papa is gone. She will never see him again. To me, that the look on her face of her knowing that she will never see him again, that is one of the most painful things that I had to deal with. My daughter is in counseling because of her dealing with the fact that somebody killed her papa, and she's very intelligent. She knows exactly what's going on. She's in counseling, having emotional problems. I have a year-old daughter that will never know her papa. I was 3 months pregnant, and one thing about my father, every pregnancy, no matter how many kids I would have had, it was like the first grandchild to him. I was only 3 months pregnant, and all he kept saying, "Hey, this one better be a boy." You know, we wanted a boy. And he was just excited with me just being 3 months, as he was with that first grandchild. And to know that he was not here, to know that I had to go through 9 months of a pregnancy and my father not being here, that it crushes me. It crushes me. You know, my daughters, they have nightmares in the middle of the night. They wake up crying for their papa. You know, he's not the grandfather that dropped in and dropped out. He came, he took them to the movies, he spent time with them, he called them on the phone. If my daughter called him and said she wanted Starburst at 10 o'clock at night, he brought her Starburst. So it's not the type of thing where granddad is gone, we'll get over it. They are devastated because of this. And personally, I don't want Sydney Dorsey to ever walk the streets again. Not in my lifetime, not in my kids' lifetime, not in their kids' lifetime. Because they, like I said, they know what's going on. And I'm sure with all of the media play, and I'm going to teach them, they're going to know who their grandfather was. Therefore, if he was to get out in their lifetime, they would know, and I think that would affect them. I just don't think that, I look at it and I try and I say, okay, we have to sympathize with his family as well because they're losing someone. But you know what? You can see your son. He can come and see you. You all can visit. You can talk to him. My kids cannot talk to their grandfather. I cannot talk to my father. And the relationship that me and my father had, you couldn't even begin to understand. And to know that I don't have him to call on, whether I just want to get up and go to lunch, or whether I just need somebody to talk to. He was my father. He was my friend. He was my life. And you took that away from me. I don't, I can't fathom what would make somebody do such a thing. I don't care how bad you have anger at someone, how bad you can hate somebody. But how could you, what gives you the right to take somebody's life? You know, that person, he had a family. He woke up in the morning and he spoke to somebody. He said good morning. You know, he visited people. You took that away from us. And I think it all should be taken away from you for the rest of your life. You should die in jail. You should never get out.
Ooh, come on with
and
it.
if it was up to me, you wouldn't see your family. I want you to suffer just as we are suffering. I want you to suffer just as my father is suffering. I'm finished.
All right, thank you. Very well said. Good job. Baby, Sheriff Durham Brown family showed up for him, baby.
Current State Police Marlon Robinson.
So
Mr.
much
Robinson.
damage done to the family and the community.
Swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give to the court shall be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name, please.
Marlon Robinson.
Mr. Robinson, are you related to the victim in this case, Mr. Derwin Brown?
Yes, I am.
And how are you related to him, sir?
I'm his son.
And would you please tell the court you have a statement at this time to make? Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Will you please make that statement at this time?
Okay, me personally, I feel convicted today. Today is supposed to be a day of rejoice for our family, because justice today will be served. But in our hearts, I know in my heart I feel sadness. I feel sadness because my father's not here. In Derwin Brown, we lost a husband, a father, a grandfather, a friend. But most importantly, humanity lost a fighter for truth. Truth, freedom, and for justice. My father was gunned down in front of his house while my brother, my sisters, his wife, friends were waiting on him to come home. My father was murdered in hopes of concealing wrongdoings. Yet by doing so, they only validated and unearthed the very fact they tried to bury. That DeKalb County was and still was a corrupt governing body. But today, that'll all be vindicated. Because today you're gonna get what you deserve. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
Sorry. Lord have mercy.
State's last witness, Your Honor, before argument is to be Mr. Ron Brown. Mr. Brown.
Your wife not gonna speak? What? Apollo.
Says in the Bible.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give to the court shall be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
State your name, please.
My name is Ron Brown.
Mr. Brown, are you related to the victim in this case, Mr. Derwin Brown?
Yes, I am.
And how are you related to him, sir?
I am his brother.
Okay. And you have a statement at this time to make to the court to assist Her Honor in sentencing?
Yes, I do.
And would you please make that statement at this time?
Yes. Throughout the months since my brother Derwin was murdered, I have often thought about those who are responsible. And when I think about what was personally taken away from me, and I think you have kind of an understanding of that listening to those who have spoken, there really aren't enough words to adequately express the type of loss that we are feeling. But I find myself taken away to a very dark place in my heart. In this place, there is hatred, vindictiveness, anger, and selfishness. And God doesn't seem to exist there because mercy doesn't exist there. And this place is truly a lonely place to be. And then I am made aware of God's presence because He never allows me to linger too long there and be consumed by the darkness. But I am also rescued by the spirit of my brother, my father, my grandfather, and all of my ancestors whose blood runs through my veins. It is they who remind me of who and what I am. They remind me that I am a man who is part of something infinitely bigger than myself. They remind me of my responsibility to them to our God, to our people, to this civilization, and of course to myself. Part of that responsibility is about striving to become the best person that I can be. It is about doing whatever I can to avoid, whatever I can do to aid in the liberation of my people from the oppressive forces of our society and our government, which is now in the process of slowly and decisively dismantling the very democratic foundation upon which it was built. My brother Derwin understood these responsibilities, for they were also his. And yes, this weak, pathetic, cowardly example of a man who is before this court today should also have assumed those responsibilities. But instead, he chose to live perpetually in the darkest recess of his heart until he was consumed by the evil that dwells there. He chose to align himself with the evil forces of corruption that plague this county's government. He chose to commit the ultimate evil act and took the life of another human being. He chose to murder my brother Derwin. What I want this court and the people to understand is that Sidney Dorsey did not only take an exceptional man from his loved ones, he took away the overwhelming voice of the people of this county. He looked democracy in the face and said, "You shall not be." He destroyed the democratic process, and in doing so, he took away a great hope, not only for this county, but for this entire nation. And anyone who truly knew my brother, what he stood for, and the type of leadership that he represented, knows the impact he would have had on the whole of our society. And now that hope is gone, and the status quo has been preserved for now. However, justice has indeed showed itself to be present during this trial, although it seemed to be absent in previous trials. And it is my hope that it continues to be present during this sentencing phase, and that Sidney Dorsey will spend the rest of his natural life in prison and will thereafter have to answer to even a higher authority. So may justice stand tall without the hindrance of man, and may it stand tall enough and reach high enough to touch all of those who consider themselves above the law. Thank you.
Your Honor, Mrs. Goldsborough thought she would be unable to make a statement, but she has asked me to ask the court if at this time she can make a statement.
That's fine.
Mrs. Brown.
It's just an age sub. And don't forget, she died less than 5 years after this of heart problems, a broken heart problem.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony shall give to the court to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, self you got?
I do.
State your name, please.
Phyllis Oliver Brown.
Mrs. Brown, you are the wife of Derwin Brown,
Yes.
and at this time, would you like to make a statement to the
Yes.
court regarding this?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Initially, I had not planned to talk because I allowed my children and Derwin's family their say-so. But now it's my turn. Sidney Dorsey, I do not dislike you, but evidently you disliked Derwin so much that you took his life. It did not matter to you that you have children because you never thought about what would happen to Derwin's children. Your wife is sitting in the courtroom. She is able to go visit you anytime she wants to. The only thing that I can go and visit is a nameplate. Derwin is not there. When I found Derwin in my driveway, I looked in his eyes and he was not there. You did that to me personally. I take it personally. The only person who has the right to take a life is my God. I do not wish death on you, but I want you to understand the death that you wished on me and mine. as your son, who you had deputies go pick up from school, who you had deputies try to get Burger King, Happy Meals, whatever, delivered to the school, my children, Derwin would never have done that. And if you did it, that's okay. But the fact is now, who's going to take him Happy Meals? Who's going to provide him lunch? I have to worry about who takes care of me and mine. You didn't care about Derwin. In your testimony, in the tape recording, you said Derwin was the lowest scumbag of the earth. I beg to differ. That is you. That is you. As you watch yourself in the mirror, understand you are the lowest scumbag of the earth. And I will not ask Judge Becker, I will not ask the DA or anyone to take your life, because like I said, my God has that in his hands. And as you sit there shaking your neck, whatever, what I wish for you is the fact that every night when you go to sleep, I want you to have a picture of Derwin every time you close your eyes, because that's all I have. I have nothing left. I don't have his arms to wrap around me. I don't have anything left other than a nameplate at Dawn Cemetery. So at least for you, I wish his face every time you close your eyes. And oh, and one more thing. I also wish I want you to hear my granddaughter scream when I was picking her up from school and she found out that she was coming to my home. And I had to ask a police officer to bring her into the house because she would not come into my house because she knew that was where her papa was killed. And it frightened her. She didn't want to go back. Now imagine that as a grandmother. I've lost my husband. Kids are grown. At least I have grandkids. But she was afraid to come to my house because she knew that was where her papa was killed. And to the men and women of the DeKalb County Police Department, DeKalb County District Attorney's Office, thank you so very much, because you have helped me to move on. But for bruh said, keep Derwin's picture in your mind, because that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Nothing further on the stage, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Now, I
Ms.
want to see
Castile?
if he's going to speak for himself. I don't know.
Yes.
Let me leave it
Reverend
alone.
Carl Dorsey.
Okay, so this must be his family now going to speak and ask for mercy. He looks so unaffected. He looks so checked out. He looked like, child. If y'all don't come get y'all cousin, somebody come get your cousin. The simple baby, come get your cousin.
You solemnly swear affirm the statements you're about to give in this case the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you. Please state your name for the records.
Carl Wentford Dorsey. First, on behalf of the Dorsey family, we extend our deepest sympathy to the Brown family. We share in your suffering and in your pain, for we are victims together. I speak for the family on behalf of this husband, this father, this grandfather, this brother, this uncle, this nephew, and cousin, our beloved former DeKalb County Sheriff, Sidney Clarence Dorsey. We know that he stands accused and convicted of a heinous crime against a family, against a constituency, against God, and against this state. We also know that he stands accused and convicted of a series of breaches of trust. But as a priestly family, we also know Sidney. We know that he is incapable morally to have done or had any part in doing that which he is accused of and consequently convicted.
Wait. Allison, AJ, don't walk up in here with your shenanigans, okay? AJ say, who is Honest Pro speaking for again? Oh, why is he wearing these glasses like that? Yes, he giving a eulogy. Y'all, we need order. Order in the court. Order in the court.
Sidney was raised in the home of our grandfather and grandmother, the late Reverend Joseph Thomas Dorsey and Miranda R. Dorsey. They were strict, God-fearing, law-abiding citizens with a high work ethic. Reverend J.T. Dorsey, our grandfather, who raised Sidney, was known throughout the nation as one of the great preachers of the gospel. He pastored the Mount Zion Baptist Church of Atlanta, Georgia for 25 years. He also pastored churches in Lithonia, Athens, and Sparta, Georgia. Sidney grew up in the church and followed the tenets of the church that he was taught.
Hey, Kathy.
Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you was one of those tenets that he clung to throughout his life. He served his uncle and my father, the late Reverend Edward Henry Dorsey, at the Tabernacle Baptist Church of Atlanta, Georgia, which my father pastored for 21 years. He was and is currently a loyal and active, faithful member of the St. Paul Lutheran Church of Decatur, Georgia. He sang in the choir and was active in various activities in his and other churches throughout the metro area. It was with this background that he served his country in the United States Army as a medic. After rendering 3 years of exemplary and honorable service to his country, Sidney was honorably discharged. He then returned to Atlanta and joined the Atlanta Police Force in 1964. He was promoted to homicide detective in 1969 after a stellar tenure as a beat officer. He continued his stellar performance as a homicide investigator, so much so that he was a lead investigator in the missing and murdered children case. During his tenure as a homicide investigator, he furthered his education by receiving a degree in law from the Atlanta Law School. In 1992, Sidney retired from the Atlanta Police Department amid the highest accolades bestowed upon a retiring officer after a sterling 28-year career. He returned to private life and launched a...
Somebody hit that on the head. Hold on. Let me see. Boom. He giving a eulogy of the man who once was. How appropriate. He eulogizing the man that used to be. That man dead, gone, never to be seen again. Who's sitting there right now, what they trying to do right now as a family is distance themselves from this person who's saying they're convicted. Okay? The eulogy is appropriate.
Security firm that was second to none in securing areas infested with drugs and crime. He successfully ran for sheriff of DeKalb County in 1996. During his tenure as sheriff, he continued his outstanding career in public law enforcement by championing the cause of fairness and goodness. His justice was, as always, tempered with mercy. To do the right thing was not only a slogan for him, but it was a way of life for him. He had many significant accomplishments during his 4-year tenure as sheriff. He established the Citizen Sheriff Advisory Board, reduced the recidivism rate from 90% to 15%, achieved state accreditation in 1998 for the Sheriff Department. The Sheriff Department was recognized by the National Institute of Correction as one of 5 model jails in the country in 1999. In April of 2000, he was recommended by the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. And by achieving a decrease in the inmate bed space, space was made available for rental to the United States Department of Justice. And by this action, some $20 million was generated to supplement the county's general operating fund, holding down the cost of government. He mentored 400 plus youth through creation of the Junior Deputy Program. He obtained a $1.6 million federal grant that prepared inmates for jobs and reduced recidivism through vocational and life skill training in the jail. He improved courthouse security. He increased service of civil process orders. He was successful in the formation of a triad with AARP, police chiefs, and the sheriff's office to reduce victimization of the elder. He created an employee chaplaincy corps. He obtained grant funding to increase domestic violence units. He created and maintained a sexual offender registry. And he provided deputy reserve volunteers to high schools to help prevent and alleviate school violence.
Ain't that about a blip?
With this, Sidney also graduated from the Georgia Sheriff's Academy, the National Sheriff's Academy.
What a waste.
He's a member of the National Sheriff Association and the Georgia Sheriff Association.
What a waste.
He's a member of Major County Sheriff's Association and a member of the American Jail Association and the Georgia Jail Association.
All that
and he's also a certified instructor at the Georgia Peace Officers Standard and Training Council, and is a lifetime member of the National Council of Negro Women.
What? I bet
All
you
of
ain't
these
gonna fire his
accomplishments
ass.
attest to the fact that Sidney is neither a murderer nor racketeer.
Huh?
Our prayer as a victimized family on behalf of our family member is that you and this court temper justice with mercy. That you and this court not add insult to our pain and suffering by and through your actions today, but only demonstrate leniency. Justice has not been served and will not be served in the case of Sidney.
Go get him.
So please, in the name of God and all that is good,
No.
do not add to this gross miscarriage of justice through callousness and hard-hearted punishment of this innocent man.
What?
Jesus, on whom Sidney and the family lean on and depend, declared to a multitude transfixed by his teachings from a Judean hillside. Judge not that ye not be judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. We pray your indulgence so that it may be well with your soul and the soul of this country, state, and nation. For it is not Sidney who has been on trial, but the courts and the justice system. It is therefore your treatment of this innocent man that the fate of this system rests. God is still the ultimate judge.
The nerve.
To quote Lowell in his Welch hymn, though the cause of evil prosper, yet 'tis truth alone is strong. Though her portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong, yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadows, keeping watch above his own. Thank
Sit
you
your
for your
ass down
indulgence.
somewhere.
The family.
A slap in the face of his whole family, of the jurors, of the court. They just
Any
said,
other witnesses for the defense?
get your ass up on that stand. I'm sorry, the judge is out of order.
Dorsey.
Oh, Lord. Woo, let's see. Oh, Lord. Let's see what he got to say. Got to say lock roll 2.
Your Honor, if it pleases the court,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
at the conclusion of the preliminary hearing some months ago, the visiting judge from Gwinnett County, I believe, stated that this court would be in search of the truth. The court is a sacred place. Our system of justice in this country is not perfect, but it's the best we have in this world. I am not, or was not, a party to the murder of Derwin Brown. I did not orchestrate. I did not plan. I did not play a role in the diabolical, horrible murder of the sheriff-elect. However, here I am. Shortly after the sheriff-elect was murdered, I was the #1 suspect. Before the first witness was interviewed, I was the #1 suspect. At 6 o'clock in the morning, a high police official indicated that this was a political assassination. I was the #1 suspect. At noon Saturday, December 16, 2000, a reporter called my house and he said, "You are the #1 guy." And here I am. My condolences continue for the Brown family. Derwin and I were merely political adversaries, but he was one that I respected. I respected Derwin because he was one of the few people in this county that stood up for something. He was one of the few people that I thought would stand up for a cause. But there's been a lot of talk about our God, and I do serve him. And I'd like to give you a perspective on my life that hasn't been told. When I was 4 years old, I was living in New York. And I remember on Green Avenue with my mother, and I don't know where my brother was at the time, but my mother had charged me with the responsibility of watching my younger sister, who's now deceased. And my mother had placed Veronica in a stroller and instructed me to watch her. So I stood in the room and I was shaking the stroller. My mother went into another room to take care of some business, I guess. And for some reason, I just pushed the stroller on the other side of the room, and as soon as I arrived over there, the ceiling caved in where I had been. My mother rushed out to find us safe. I want to fast forward to 1973. I was getting off from work. I was driving eastbound on I-20. I fell asleep at the wheel.
Sometime later, I woke up and my car was exiting McDaniel Street, and I woke up just in time to bring the car to a halt before going into the ensuing traffic. On another occasion in the early 70s, I had a call to do a follow-up. I had an occasion to do a follow-up call on the southwest side of Atlanta. And as soon as I walked up the stairs to knock on the door, I heard a gunshot. The bullet came from the inside and exited the door and fell right to my feet and rested. And the last case I like to bring to you, and there are many others, in 1999, I was driving in DeKalb County in Stone Mountain someplace, and I think it was Stone Mountain Industrial, and I fell asleep again at the wheel. I woke up sometime later, and the car was moving down some strange community, neighborhood, and as I woke up like in a dream, the car was moving and there were cars parked on each side of the street. And I realized that I wasn't dreaming, I was in a car, and I brought the car to a home. And I was lost. I didn't know quite where I was, and it took me 10 minutes to find my way out of that community. I don't know. I simply want to say that sometime before the verdict, and long before that, it was always my opinion, and our opinion, the defense team, that we would be victorious. I never thought that an innocent man would be convicted of a crime that he didn't do. And my first objective was to walk over to the prosecution team's table and say, no hard feeling. And then I was going to search out Ms. Brown, Derwin's mother, and apologize to her for bringing down those curses and I'm not a cursing man. I don't know why, and it was captured by a GBI agent who was discussing something with me in my office, but that was extremely embarrassing to me, and it was one of the things notwithstanding what Cuffy said, Sky has said, and all these other folks, the one thing that I regretted, and the one thing that I was most concerned about, and the one thing I was dreading hearing again, was the playing of that tape, those curse words ringing down, because I'm not a cursing man, and that's probably the only time I've ever used profanity in that office. I was given a book a couple of days ago by one of the inmates where I was staying in. On page 26 of that book, I ran across a passage that truly moved me, and I thought that I'd copy it down and read it to y'all, and maybe that would give you, as it gave me, some perspective about why I'm here. If you will, Your Honor. If God had dealt with you according to your sins, you would be dead. But God is merciful. He is determined to maneuver you to a place where he can minister to you. When you really belong to God, he will go to extreme measures to get you away from people. The cliques, the clubs, spas, pubs, society, or any kind of entanglement that will hinder you from hearing his voice. But when you are really listening, when you are called by God, he will orchestrate things in your life so that he can have you to himself completely. Your Honor, and the Brown family, and my family, I know you're going to sentence me severely, but I do not have the blood of Derwin Brown on my hands. I'm going to be in prison on the outside, but I'll be free on the inside because I do not have the blood of the sheriff-elect on my hands. Thank you.
We have just a moment, Your Honor, before you step down.
Certainly. Mr. Dorsey, please retake the stand.
All that raising his hand up, swearing to God, just for him years later to finally confess.
Mr. Dorsey, you say the one thing you regretted was a tape recording being played in court of you cursing?
I regretted hearing, yes.
You didn't regret hearing about all the thefts you committed?
I did not consider them thefts, Mr. Petrie.
Okay. Well, you realize the jury did, and you've now been convicted of it.
I understand that, yes.
You didn't regret being convicted of racketeering?
I regretted being convicted of any crime.
But what you told us a few minutes ago was the one thing you regretted was you're looking bad being heard on tapes using curse words. Is that not correct?
I said that I regretted hearing curse words.
That was the one thing you regretted, right?
That I regretted using curse words against in regard to the sheriff-elect.
And you don't regret any of the corruption that you led that sheriff's department into for 4 years, using the deputies and the detention officers and employees over and over to pick up your kids, to fix your own cars, to drive to other states, to steal from the county. You don't regret one bit of that, do you, sir?
I have never to this day, Mr. Petrie, considered anything that I did in that regard a theft. Because it was never, it had never to this day been my intention to steal. I was actually informed by one who I thought knew the rules and regulations and the behavior of the sheriff since he had been there so long, that these things were proper and above board, and I was within my legal right to do it. So at no time, and had I thought I was stealing, I certainly wouldn't have made it known because I never did anything in secret.
If you didn't think it was stealing, if you didn't think it was illegal, if you didn't know it was wrong, Mr. Dorsey, explain to the court why it was that you had to go to such elaborate measures with Lieutenant Baker to lie, to falsify documents, and to lie to Fred Mays about what you were doing using these employees to work at your business, Sid Incorporated, a for-profit corporation that made money for you every time you sent one of these deputies there. Why did you think you had to cover it up if you didn't think it was wrong, sir?
We never had any intentions of covering it up, Mr. Petrie. As a matter of fact, we were never paid by the bank. I considered it a public service when the bank called me personally because the person who was running the office was lying on her deathbed and then eventually died. When there were times when the bank would not open because there was not an officer there, then I simply sent someone to stand by. But the bank wouldn't open until someone got there. But they never clocked in, they never signed in, and that was a process to be paid. There was never any exchange of money.
Isn't it true that you yourself clocked in as a security guard for SID while you were still sheriff and signed those sheets showing that you were working at the bank?
No, sir, never.
And isn't it true that you never once sent a deputy or detention officer to any bank other than the one that made hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for SID? No other bank on the face of this earth got a free deputy sheriff or detention officer, did it?
No other bank called me.
And that's where you had your contract.
That's correct.
Hey, Connie.
And you say you don't feel you did anything wrong. Am I missing something based on the stories about the bullets through the doorknobs and the falling asleep at the wheel? You felt that somehow someone was watching out for you and you were special, is that right?
I know someone is watching out for me.
Okay. And because the bullet didn't hit you, the roof didn't fall on you, because you didn't fall asleep at the wheel and kill somebody, get killed, somebody's looking out for you.
I think so.
So somebody obviously wanted Derwin Brown dead on December the 15th. Nobody was watching out for him, were they?
Well, I didn't want him dead. I had nothing to do with his death.
That's all, Your Honor.
All right, step down, Mr. Dorsey.
All right, so. And there you have it. Who shot the sheriff? Who shot the sheriff? As it was turned out, a lot of people was responsible for the death of the sheriff-elect Derwin Brown. It was masterminded and ordered by Sidney Dorsey. It was carried out by 4 henchmen. And the impact was felt for a long, long time. Let me read this. Hold on, I'm trying to get this to stop in the background. Now, it's not an interview that I can show you guys, but, oh, damn, I can't get this to stop. I can read this article. I'm going to wait until I see my bubble moving again. Okay, I'm letting my... Now, this trial was in 2002. Hold on. This article was in 2007, so 5 years later. Dorsey requested of Miss Fleming to come to the prison for an interview. Okay? And so this is what he said. Well, let me read this part. According to Miss Fleming, that's who went to the prison, Mr. Dorsey told her that after the August 12, 2000 election, he was angry about losing and his marriage was in turmoil in the wake of sexual harassment allegations. A few days after the election, Mr. Dorsey gave Patrick Cuffey a note ordering the assassination. But Mr. Dorsey said that a few weeks later, he cooled off and had a change of heart, Miss Fleming said. Quote, I was crazy. I was out of my mind. I want to move on with my life. Forget that. Miss Fleming said Mr. Dorsey told Mr. Cuffey. Mr. Dorsey told Miss Fleming he had no knowledge the assassination would proceed. Mr. Dorsey's confession has been little consolation to the Brown family, said Brown's daughter, Brandy Brown Rhodes. We heard her at the sentencing, who attended the press conference Thursday and called the confession a joke. Steve Leibel, the lawyer for the Brown family, said Thursday's development strengthens their claim against the state that Mr. Brown died in the line of duty. The state of Georgia has a moral obligation in light of the sheriff's confession to compensate this family, he said. See, she didn't get compensated. And that's the end of the article. Okay? So, okay. No, that's not his testimony. That was him at his sentencing. He got found guilty. He's still in prison now. He's 84 years old. And that is the conclusion, Lit Lane Jury Box, for one of our very first legendary trials. Okay? We need to... I really kind of like doing the legendary trials because they kind of like slow burners and easy to go through. Yes, is it on the calendar to revisit Monica Cementelli's court case? Yes, I think we would need to see the, I've kind of been following here and there. But not as closely. I didn't actually watch 2 other trials in the midst of Cementelli. I watched the, what's that name? That Megan Boswell trial. I watched that one since in the last couple of weeks, and then I got caught up watching the Rose Killer trial, the one that just ended today in the verdict. So we do need to revisit the Cementelli's court case, but I think I'm gonna wait. They still on the state. Wait till a little bit more and then have the good testimony, because it's just really drawn out. I know that we wanted to do. Remember, I showed y'all the list, the possibilities for the legendary trials. I don't know what I'm gonna have to see and find Tiki and see how she's doing. I haven't seen Tiki in a while, but she really wanted us to watch the Menendez brothers trial, and then they had the one with the evil twin. A couple of y'all had said the evil twin. You know, are they all earners? Most of the cases are earners. You know, I try to put a space between watching trials that involve children, and we haven't done one. Yeah, that was the boring one. Yeah, the Megan Boswell case was very interesting, but I try to really space those out involving the kids and everything, because it's such an emotional impact. But you know, we can't just avoid it at all times, right? I'm kind of thinking, you know, I kind of think next week. Yeah, you want to see the Mendez trial? Girl, did I say the Menendez? Any neighbor crimes? Not that I've come across. I came across right now. They got a trial going on, y'all, about this man who killed a dog. Okay, a rescue dog. I mean, it ain't funny, but he is really on trial. But the only thing I thought about showing y'all that one, and for us to start that one, because I thought it was interesting. But he's Spanish, and all the witnesses Spanish and interpreters and stuff like that. Wait a minute, the Mendez is on Netflix, but not the trial. You know, the Mendez. Wait a minute, y'all spelling it wrong. The Menendez brothers is the actual. We have the actual legendary trial. Let me show y'all real quick something. No. We'll come back. Look here. We'll come and we're gonna look at the ones. What we can do is look at the website with all the legendary trials, and maybe if we go through there, we can find one that's, you know, but you know, the legendary trials are mainly the murder trials, you know, quite honestly. Yeah. So maybe I'll have that ready for tomorrow. Y'all try to meet, y'all come back in the morning. Meet me tomorrow, because we doing, tomorrow gonna be in the morning. We're gonna do that girl from Michigan who abandoned her kids. We're gonna look at what's going on with that, get familiar with that case that's just starting, and then we can also look at, don't forget to keep track of what you are doing for the month of February. I got my calendar. The Murdaugh trial. So the Murdaugh trial, and that'd be a more recent one. Okay. Now that might be one that's interesting in us to start going into, but I think that we should start like a new big trial at the beginning, because the month almost over, right? So I'm thinking we can watch like a couple of smaller trials, shorter trials. Well, no, what today is? Today is the 20th. We got like 2 weeks. We could get in. So which one y'all want to see? Y'all want me to put a poll up on the thing tomorrow? Y'all want me to put a poll up tomorrow on the wall? No, I'm not good with Excel. Y'all want me to put a poll up? Okay, so what the poll gonna be between what? The Mendez brothers, the Murdaugh trial. Okay, but who gonna be on the poll? The Mendez, the Murdaugh trial, or what about, I really think that y'all would get really interested in that young black cop that was in Georgia. It was just last year. That trial was so interesting, but we can wait. So put it between the Murdaugh and the Mendez brothers, and then we can do a secret vote. Who go on the poll? Who y'all want me to put on the poll? Y'all tell me. Y'all gotta tell me. Y'all not telling me. That Bonet girl, she never had a trial. John Bonet, that's what you talking about. There never was a trial. Nobody ever got found. They never even found the person to put on trial for her murder. It's still like an unsolved case. You didn't see everything Menendez. Okay, so let's do the murder trial. We will do the murder trial. I have not seen it at all. Okay, so we'll get geared up to start the murder trial next Monday night. Okay, and I will work on getting some stuff and everything. I'm going to, because we don't meet tomorrow night, I'm gonna go ahead, and I know I'll be saying what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna really go ahead and try to get some pictures, some visuals, some links, and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm thinking maybe, you know how like I put the link for the episode, maybe I'll find like a 20 or 48 hours or something like that, and we can watch it. You know what I'm saying? Together we can try to see. Oh, y'all, let me show y'all know I got my little head wrap on, but you know I ain't worried about none of that, baby. Let me I want to show y'all real quick. Apollo, look, we cut his hair in his face so you can see more of his face. Say hey. Look this way. Say hey. And look at my thermal nails, y'all. This is my thermal blue nails. I love them. From Temu, no, from Shein. They be so pretty. Okay, y'all. You just made it home. Damn, Livy, you must have been driving out of state. Oh, true. Wait a minute. Girl, you're going to live that one. You're going to love that one. It's good. The murder trial? Okay. Oh, true. But they keep saying how they illed her full of BS to me, though. Right, with the I can't talk. If you want to brush up on it, go watch the Netflix breakdown of it. Of what? Murder? Go watch the Netflix breakdown of murder. Y'all got to be more clear in what y'all saying. But we're going to do the breakdown this month. We're going to have the breakdown with the one that Lady Steph was talking about, where I dropped the link and we talk about the different cases and stuff. I do remember that we said we was going to do that last month. Got you. Okay? So, all right, y'all. We got a lot on our calendar. I got a lot to do. I'm going to do it. Okay? Y'all have a great night. This is the end of Legendary Trial number 1. Next week, we start the murder trial. Tomorrow, between 10 and 11, one of them times, I will be live and we'll be talking about some current event and crime news. All right? Have you ever heard about the judge in Orange County? Yes. Is that you know what? Is that the judge that just went on trial? He's 74 years old. And he killed that woman with that gun after they just went to the... Yes, I just watched a part of that. I just watched opening statements or something like that tonight. And I say, we need to check that out. That'll be a good daytime trial. All right, good night, y'all. Wait a minute. Live and see. You answer her questions and she switched to something else or blame us. What answer? Oh, when she say she had to make stops, I ain't got time for good night. I'm not finna play with Winter. Winter always throwing a zinger in.
Thanks for watching. Do not forget click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Like, comment and share. See you next time.